Did you know that in 1989, over 1 million people gathered in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to demand democratic reforms? And yet this massive show of power and unity was met with a brutal crackdown that changed the course of history. Or consider that in 1789, a small group of French revolutionaries stormed the Bastille, sparking a wave of change that toppled a monarchy and reshaped Europe. These events didn't just happen by chance. They were the result of carefully crafted strategies and relentless determination. In this video, we're diving deep into the world of political movements to uncover the secrets behind their success. We'll explore how quiet whispers can ignite powerful revolutions, how persuasive rhetoric can turn tides, and how seemingly small underdog groups can change the world. We'll reveal how secret societies have quietly steered political outcomes and how reform, rather than revolution, can often achieve lasting change. Plus, we'll connect past strategies with today's movements, showing how history's echoes still shape our world. Chapter 1. Whispers of Dissent, the spark that ignites movements. Every great political movement starts with a whisper. These whispers, though often ignored at first, can grow into roars that change the course of history. Consider the French Revolution. It didn't begin with a bang, but rather with quiet discussions in Parisian salons. Small groups of intellectuals and common folk debated the unfairness of the monarchy. Over time, these discussions turned into something much bigger. A lesser-known example is the Philippine Revolution of 1896. It started with a secret society called the Katipunan. This group began as a small underground movement. Their strategy? Educate and unite the people in secret, away from the prying eyes of the Spanish colonizers. By 1896, what started as whispered meetings in basements and fields grew into a full-scale revolt. Another strategy often used by early dissenters is literature. Books, pamphlets, and letters spread revolutionary ideas without raising too many alarms. Take Thomas Paine's Common Sense as an example. This pamphlet was published anonymously and argued for American independence. It sold 500,000 copies in its first year, a staggering number for the 18th century. The power of the written word can't be underestimated when it comes to igniting change. Whispers of dissent are like seeds. They need time to grow, but once they take root, they're almost impossible to stop. The strategy of starting small, staying under the radar, and gradually building momentum has proven effective throughout history. It's a reminder that even the smallest voices can become the loudest over time. Chapter 2. Rhetoric and Rebellion. The power of persuasive voices. Words have the power to start revolutions. Throughout history, charismatic leaders have used rhetoric to inspire people and challenge the status quo. One of the most famous examples is Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. In just over 17 minutes, King painted a vivid picture of a future free from racial segregation. His words were so powerful that they're still quoted today. But it's not just the content of the speech that matters, it's also the delivery. Adolf Hitler, despite his horrific ideology, was a master of oratory. He understood the importance of timing, tone, and repetition. His speeches could whip a crowd into a frenzy, making them believe in his vision of a new Germany. It's a dark reminder of how powerful rhetoric can be, for better or worse. Rhetoric doesn't always have to be grandiose. Sometimes simple, straightforward language is just as effective. Take the slogan, "Peace, Land, Bread," used during the Russian Revolution. This phrase, coined by the Bolsheviks, was easy to remember and spoke directly to the needs of the people. It promised them exactly what they wanted during a time of war and poverty. This strategy of using concise, relatable language can resonate deeply with the masses. In the end, persuasive voices are often the catalysts for change. Whether through fiery speeches or simple slogans, the ability to connect with people on an emotional level is key. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it. This strategy of combining powerful content with effective delivery has proven successful time and time again. Chapter 3. Underdogs and Uprisings, when the margins take center stage. History is full of stories where the underdogs rise up and change everything. These are the movements that start at the margins, often led by those who have been pushed aside or ignored. One classic example is the American Civil Rights Movement. African Americans who faced severe discrimination and violence used peaceful protests to demand equality. The strategy was simple yet effective: non-violent resistance. Martin Luther King Jr. called it a weapon unique in history, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. But not all underdog movements are peaceful. The Haitian Revolution, for example, was a violent uprising led by enslaved Africans. They fought against French colonizers and won independence in 1804, making Haiti the first free black republic in the world. What's remarkable about this movement is that it was led by people who had nothing to lose. Their strategy was to fight with everything they had, knowing that the alternative was continued enslavement. Another interesting case is the Zapatista movement in Mexico. This group of indigenous people started an uprising in 1994, protesting against the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. They used a combination of armed resistance and digital communication. Yes, digital communication. The Zapatistas were one of the first movements to use the internet to spread their message globally. This strategy of combining traditional and modern methods helped them gain international support. Underdogs often use unconventional strategies because they don't have the resources or power that their opponents do. Whether through non-violent resistance, all-out rebellion, or innovative use of technology, these movements show that those on the margins can indeed take center stage. The key is to be resourceful and fearless, turning disadvantages into strengths. If this video is your jam, subscribe and let's keep the momentum going. Chapter 4. Shadows of Power, the Role of Secret Societies and Covert Operations. Not all political movements happen in the open. Some of the most significant changes in history have been driven by secret societies and covert operations. These groups work in the shadows, using stealth and secrecy as their primary strategies. A prime example is the Illuminati, founded in 1776. Though shrouded in mystery, the Illuminati aimed to influence political decisions behind the scenes, promoting Enlightenment ideals like freedom of thought and the separation of church and state. Another well-known secret society is the Freemasons. Their influence has been felt in various revolutions, including the American Revolution. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and other key figures were Freemasons. They used their meetings to discuss and plan revolutionary activities away from the prying eyes of the British. This strategy of operating within secretive networks allowed them to organize effectively without raising suspicion. Covert operations also play a crucial role in political movements. The CIA, for example, has been involved in numerous covert actions that have shaped global politics. One notable case is the 1953 coup in Iran, where the CIA orchestrated the overthrow of Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. This operation, known as Operation Ajax, was kept secret for decades. It's a reminder of how powerful governments can manipulate political outcomes without the public's knowledge. Even grassroots movements sometimes rely on covert strategies. The Underground Railroad is a powerful example. It wasn't a formal organization, but rather a network of secret routes and safe houses used by enslaved African Americans to escape to free states. The success of the Underground Railroad depended on its secrecy and the trust between its members. The strategy of using secrecy, whether through formal secret societies or covert operations, has proven effective in many political movements. By staying in the shadows, these groups can operate without attracting attention, allowing them to execute their plans without interference. Chapter 5. The Art of Compromise when Reform Triumphs over Revolution. Revolution often gets the spotlight, but sometimes reform is the more powerful path to change. Reform doesn't mean giving up. It means working within the system to make it better. One of the best examples of this is the Progressive era in the United States, which spanned from the 1890s to the 1920s. During this time, activists pushed for changes like labor rights, women's suffrage, and government regulation of business. They didn't overthrow the government, they reformed it from within. The strategy here was clear: use the existing political system to create lasting change. Instead of tearing down institutions, reformers worked to improve them. One of the most successful reformers of this era was President Theodore Roosevelt. He believed in the Square Deal, which aimed to protect the common man from big business. His strategy involved passing laws that regulated corporations and protected workers, proving that you don't always need a revolution to achieve significant change. Another powerful example of reform is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This landmark legislation didn't come from a revolution, but from years of peaceful protests, legal challenges, and political lobbying. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. used a strategy of non-violent resistance combined with political pressure to push for reform. This approach eventually led to the dismantling of segregation laws, demonstrating that patient, persistent reform can be just as effective as revolution. Reform also has the advantage of being less disruptive than revolution. While revolutions often lead to instability and violence, reform can achieve change with less social upheaval. For example, the New Deal reforms during the Great Depression helped stabilize the U.S. economy and provided a safety net for millions of Americans. This strategy of using government intervention to create social safety nets has since been adopted by many countries around the world. In essence, the art of compromise and reform is about working within the system to change it. It's a strategy that requires patience, negotiation, and often the ability to see the long game. But when done right, it can lead to profound and lasting change. Chapter 6: Echoes of Change: How Past Movements Resonate in Today's Politics. The past is never truly gone, it echoes in the present. Political movements from history continue to influence the way we think, act, and organize today. The strategies used in past revolutions and reforms have shaped modern movements in surprising ways. Consider the Arab Spring, which began in 2010. This wave of protests across the Middle East was fueled by modern technology. Social media played a crucial role. But the strategy of using communication tools to mobilize the masses isn't new. It echoes the pamphlets and underground newspapers used in past revolutions, like those during the French Revolution. Another modern example is the Black Lives Matter (BLM) movement. While BLM uses digital platforms to spread its message, its strategies are rooted in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Non-violent protests, civil disobedience, and grassroots organizing are all tactics borrowed from leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. The phrase, "no justice, no peace," reflects the same urgency for change that fueled past civil rights struggles. Interestingly, even the concept of leaderless movements, which is prominent in BLM and Occupy Wall Street, has historical roots. The women's suffrage movement, particularly in the UK, often operated without a central leader, using decentralized networks to organize rallies and campaigns. This strategy allowed them to be flexible and adapt quickly, much like modern movements that use the internet to coordinate across cities and countries. Political movements also continue to influence policy. For example, the environmental activism of the 1970s led to the creation of Earth Day and the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, in the US today. The strategies of those early environmentalists, such as using public demonstrations and lobbying, are echoed in the global climate change movement. The recent surge in youth activism led by figures like Greta Thunberg shows how past movements continue to inspire new generations. The echoes of change are all around us. By understanding the strategies of past political movements, we can see how they continue to shape the present. Whether through reform or revolution, the lessons learned from history guide us in navigating the complex political landscape of today. For more great content, hit subscribe and never miss a video.